Hey everyone, let's start the webinar. Integration of negative beliefs. This webinar comes after we've spent a lot of time discussing what negative beliefs are and how we can work through them with our hearts. And today I'm going to provide a comprehensive summary and diligently endeavor to ensure that any lingering questions that were previously hidden or perhaps left entirely unaddressed will be thoroughly and completely covered from all conceivable perspectives and sides. In other words, we're going to look at the topic of beliefs from a different perspective, or let's say from another angle. And for those who aren't familiar with this topic at all, I hope it will also become clear what negative beliefs are, how they influence or actually shape our world and the sequence of events in our lives, and how we can continue to exist with all of this to work, to live well. So let's get started. Let's begin to explore the topic in the following way. First, we'll look at what negative beliefs are, why they even exist, who or what they are, and so on. So take a look. It's actually very simple. Negative beliefs, or beliefs in general, are easy to understand and examine from the perspective of what is the brain's neural network. As you know, the brain's neural network consists of, not like the drawing I have here, of course, but in general, in our actual physical brain, neural connections are encoded. In other words, these are literally connections that are encoded, along which we think. It's very straightforward. So this doesn't violate any logical connection. There's nothing esoteric about it. At precisely the same time, the primary and most fundamental connections, what can be accurately called the essential main pathways along which our intricate thoughts and established thinking patterns consistently move and develop, are nothing other than what we profoundly call deeply ingrained beliefs, which inherently form distinct and often rigid boundaries. And why, one might ask, is this entire process even truly necessary to consider and understand? Look, you are an infinite being and you incarnate in a body. Out of all this infinity, you need to choose what to focus your attention on, right? In other words, where have I even ended up? What is this planet? What is the color blue? What is a smell? What is the smell of strawberries? What is gravity? All of this is a boundary. Some beliefs are collectively assigned, like gravity. If I jump from the second floor, it will hurt because you can test it. A collective connection is not needed for them. There's no need to reprogram them every time, to think about how they work each time. In other words, they're installed right away and we automatically agree with them. We won't talk about this anymore now. We're focusing more on how it works individually. Now, for example, like with those Native Americans who once had never seen Columbus's ships when he arrived. They simply didn't interpret it. It didn't fit into their concept that such a huge thing could be on the water. They just didn't see them. In the same way, a person doesn't see many things that are beyond the limits of their perception. These boundaries are directly encoded in the physical brain. And our eyes are designed in such a way that we see very little, and we don't even see with our eyes. We receive a signal, which in fact we ourselves sent as a request, and then our brain interprets what it is that we're actually seeing. That is, so to speak, or actually, to be precise, if your brain had vibrational connections at high frequencies, let's call them, very conditionally, X-ray frequencies, you could interpret, see through walls, or see spaceships of extraterrestrial civilizations that are actually right here. And by changing all of this, I'm only talking about visual things for now. These are boundaries. Moving on. There are many of these boundaries, and this is how our brain thinks. In other words, I was taught this, so I know how to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I had experiences 1, 2, 5, 12. And within this framework, I have to act. I can't go beyond the boundaries. That's how our laws are built. That's what our government always relies on. Here are the laws for you. Believe in the law. Here are new laws. Since you agreed with the previous ones, here, take more and more and more. As a result, we're all within a framework. And so the mind is within these frameworks, within these boundaries. For each person, it comes down individually to something, and then there's the moment of decision making. That is when you need to think about something. In fact, it's the neural connections that are structured in such a way that this person sees the situation like this, and another person sees the situation differently. Not because they know more, but because their neural connections are different. I'll say a bit more about this today. And all technologies in general, computers and so on, are all made in the likeness of how we ourselves are structured. And our AIs work on the same principle. You know, you take one AI like ChatGPT, ask it a question, what is this or how does this work? It gives you its own interpretation. You take another AI, which is trained on different models, and it gives you a third interpretation. Well, if you know about prompts and so on, you can tell it, answer like a scientist or answer like a child, and it will. It's just a different interpretation. So a belief is an embedded interpretation that the brain uses in order to see, hear, and think about anything at all. That's what a belief is. It's simple, really elementary, right? Let's move on. So an ordinary average person, when we say that someone is in linear 3D perception at low frequencies, their interpretation is linear, as narrow as possible. In other words, a person in depression is roughly like this. Just like in the picture, they're looking at something and running the same thoughts in circles over and over again. In other words, basically, there's no way out for them as long as the person agrees with this belief system. When the belief system changes, what happens is the boundaries shift, meaning the wall comes down and suddenly, voila, the world turns out to be different. So look, what's interesting is that the world was always different. It was just the interpretation that made it seem like there were walls. And what we're doing today is looking at how to remove those walls. How exactly can we use negative beliefs not to destroy the universe, not to ruin our reality, but to remove from the universe what limits us, so that everything can blossom, start moving, and be perceived by us the way we want it to be. Now then, in short, it's clear how beliefs work and how they become fixed. It's great that everything is clear to you. What to reintegrate, how to press them down, to assign them, to press and assign them the status of being useful. Well, you see, if you already understand, then you should know how to properly and wisely assign the status of usefulness. Everything is clear. I'm not being sarcastic right now, I'm just saying, look at what exactly is clear to you so you can understand the next step, because that's exactly what we're looking at now. Moving from one clear thing to another. That's what's next. Step by step, precisely. All right? Now, answering this particular question about the status of usefulness, we need to realize the following. That removing previous roots doesn't work. That is, if there is a negative belief that says you are unworthy, you can't do it, you don't have the experience, you haven't learned this, you're not in the right condition, neither here nor there. So as many systems, so to speak, approach this topic, let's just snip, let's say you come to hypnosis or to some specialist, and they will supposedly snip away the negative, and you'll immediately go out into the world. Someone else might paint it in a different light, but no matter how it seems, another person cannot rewrite your neural connections for you. Look, things aren't working out with neural systems because it's all already built in, and you can't cut out part of your brain to make it work differently, Therefore, the general principle that we follow is that we do not cut out or remove anything, but we integrate something. Namely, we realize that all realities are possible and we simply choose a different path. And in all of this, there is something specific. Now we are going to look at the nuances of how we restructure the system. We tell the system that the current paths available to us are not satisfactory, and we take into account the principle of yes. That is, we must always include something that is more effective, and our brain should start interpreting things from the standpoint of greater efficiency. And then it picks up on that. So it looks like this is being built within the same neural network. A different route. But here there is a tiny tricky point. It's as if it's the same neural network. It's kind of the same You know, there are trillions of neurons, or actually billions to be more precise. But as for the connections, are there trillions of those? There are even more possible connections, I think, and those connections that didn't exist at all. And let's say we're in a dormant state, those are the ones that get activated. And now we move on to part 2, the work of hidden beliefs. So here we need to, why am I talking about this now? I want to say a couple of words about robots, and you'll understand what I mean. Look, the work of hidden beliefs. Besides the fact that they do something and we ask questions about what happens to the body, why something collapses, or why some event suddenly occurs. Using modern robots as an example, there is a particular issue. So you see this really cool robot. It can jump, it can even do somersaults. And you watch, for example, the Chinese put on these shows where the robots perform there. Kung Fu, and you think, wow, I wish I had a guy like that at home. But then, you know what happens? The guy comes into the house, picks up speed, and runs straight into a mirror. Boom, right into it with his head. And you're like, wait a second. You talk to me in 80 languages. You understand? You can solve Olympiad level problems like a medalist. Everything seems so intelligent, but how do you not realize you're walking into glass? Or you give it a command like make some food, and it doesn't even know how to crack an egg. By the way, how do you crack an egg? I'll show you that later on. So let's do it this way. It'll be more illustrative. So you expect that since it's intelligent, you've discussed with it how to rule the world. These are the kinds of questions people are interested in, yes? How to change everything, how to rule the world, how to make $1 billion. He'll give you the whole plan. If you do not know, type in the chat GPT, how to make $1 billion. He'll give you the plan. We follow the plan, and hypothetically at the end, there's $1 billion. So you've bought yourself this kind of robot that can dance, and it can also tell you how to make $1 billion. And then you start with it. Simple questions, solving things, playing with it. That's what you have. A cool, awesome robot. Everyone seems to get it. Everything's great. And then suddenly it turns out that you, well, how to put it? You could do something like the wrong eggs went and killed. And what happened? How did it happen? And you know what the problem with such a robot is? Its thinking, its interpretation, let's say, is not set up right. Yes, it's about interpretation. It interprets things based on the data that has been loaded into it. And it moves within gravity, within this universe, according to other algorithms you taught it, like how a hand lifts, how all of that works. And it doesn't correlate the outside world with what it's doing. So, for example, you say, let's break these eggs, we'll break them now. Yes, right now. For whom here? But right away, it processed the action. So what's happening right now? Tesla? Yes, they're kind of preparing their Optimus. It's supposed to come out in 2026. Maybe someone will be watching this webinar in the summer of 2026. Maybe it's already been released. And the logic is that it all has to be in one block, everything. So it has to understand both what's happening online right now and what it has been trained on. So look, our belief system is built into us. I'm transitioning to that now. So that when we approach some truly scary things, it's important to remember this. So one advanced robot possesses significant intelligence and extensive training in something. In the same way, we actually have beliefs, we have thinking, or what we call the subconscious and the mind. So inside us, I'll try to explain this as simply as possible. Inside us, there is a belief, for example, that you can't do this. But the mind says, I'll run over there, it's closer that way. But the belief says, that's not right. It's dangerous, I could get punished, I could fall. A person starts to do something and suddenly they're caught, or suddenly something falls on them, or suddenly he bumps into something. In other words, he kind of gets punished. But in reality, he's punishing himself with his own internal belief. Or in the case of some illness, suddenly the body refuses to do something. And the person wonders, how is this possible? The body broke down. I need to get treatment. Go to the doctor. No, it's the system of internal beliefs that block the option. So, a hidden negative belief, that very fence tells you, you can't go here. And it's not just you can't for the sake of it, it's because there's a hidden command, otherwise you will suffer. So it's never just a simple, you can't, and that's it. The belief itself contains the idea that if you go there, something bad will happen to you. And that's why I will block you. In other words, this happens inside and a person doesn't have time to react to it. So with negative beliefs, besides generating a certain thought, there's also an option, let's call it, to block physical action through the body, and people call these things illnesses or something else, or a blockage through an event. Both the body and the event are completely 100% generated by the person. And here, look, this is a really, really tricky thing. How is this illusion constructed? Because this is generated by a hidden negative belief, the person is absolutely convinced that it's the outside world that's interfering with them, that something or someone from the outside came and prevented them from doing something. And as for the body, for some reason, it supposedly betrayed the person for some abstract reasons, like a lack of calcium or not enough vitamin D, I've already said, it always seems very strange to me when something is wrong with a person. They've blocked the flow in their body, meaning something in the body is blocked, and then they go to a specialist and say it hurts, and the specialist, you see, is like this. Within our paradigm, I mean the linear 3D one, the specialist opens a book, so to speak, in their mind and says, okay, these are the symptoms of this, without even looking at what actually happened to the person. How is that? Just look, there are so many doctors today. I'll use a rather significant word here, even dedicated healers, those compassionate individuals who genuinely help others, who already deeply understand that you truly need to look deeply inside yourself. What is going on with the person's mind? How did they bring themselves to this situation? Because if you don't help a person overcome and change their beliefs, they'll repeat it, or there will be a remission, a recurrence of the same blockage in the body. Let's move on. Here's another very significant point I'd like to particularly emphasize, and also because in most conversations with people who consider themselves extremely logical, their math always adds up, they're educated, they have 1,000,000 degrees, or they think they know everything, read everything, so they look at another person and say, you're an idiot because you don't understand anything. I know how to think constructively. Here the word constructively, or to be a true realist, truly comes into play. This entire concept of realism, well, certainly not all of it, but this particular kind, when an individual genuinely relies upon their own deeply held internal belief system, it invariably makes someone else's differing belief system appear utterly and completely idiotic. It's very interesting to observe from the outside when one belief system argues with another belief system. Moreover, even if, let's put it bluntly, these good people, let's say the so-called good ones, want good things, and like these bad ones want, well, something else, they bring violence into the world, and these others want something else. You see, in a system where you have goodness, happiness, peace, and love, that's where you are. But they are in a system where they see a world of violence and so on, and in that world, the logic of violence is justified because they're simply in a different world. And your logic just doesn't fit in. And so someone might say to you, like, you come and share what I'm talking about now, and someone will ask, what is this? This doesn't align with physics at all. Scientists have proven it. Of course. Let me tell you. First of all, yes, scientists, what I'm talking about now is almost entirely, everything has been proven precisely by modern science, the science that 99% of scientists follow. Most of them aren't even aware of it, because these are processes happening right now, today. And most scientists, those who are called scientists, are focused on their own field within their own topic. They were trained 20, 30, 40 years ago in something, and they don't even have time to see what's new happening in the world. So here's the thing. If we start discussing who's right and who's wrong, we'll just end up saying this guy's a fool, or that guy's a fool, or the other guy's a fool. And so on, we'll keep going in circles because we're simply stuck in a system of beliefs. If you start to grasp the bigger picture as a whole, you'll see that even the smartest person, even the most logical ones, he gives speeches, he has, I don't know, a ton of credentials, he has books, all sorts of diplomas, dissertations, whatever you like, right? He's recognized, people applaud him, he thinks everyone else is a fool because he's so smart. But as soon as you look at him from a different belief system, he immediately looks like a complete fool himself because he doesn't take certain things into account at all. And we always risk ending up in a situation where everyone around us seems like a fool if we insist on sticking to our own belief system. That's why it's important to note the following point here. Once again, the mind doesn't know how to connect the frequencies of events because its plans are just abstractions. I want to add to this now. It's important to highlight this point. The mind relies on a belief system and operates from it. In other words, whatever is loaded into the mind interprets it and produces a result. And when you try to build something, to materialize something, to create with the mind, apart from what has already been loaded into it, it has no new data. It cannot create. There are many people here who are already aware of what I'm talking about now, of how this process works, many who feel it themselves, because it is the frequency itself that creates directly, the one that is connected, that passes through the heart. In other words, the heart acts as a generator. What happens is direct creation through frequency, and when you generate your state, who I am, what I represent, your overall set of beliefs, this generation manifests in reality. And the mind here is like that robot that either knows how to break eggs or doesn't. It can't go beyond the boundaries of this room. It's limited to what has been programmed into it. In other words, it doesn't know how to make connections. Why? Because its job is to interpret information that's already been received. It can only observe. I like this option or that one, but after that, you need to shift to the frequency of where you want to go. So literally, look, not to think about something, but to generate something. Do you understand the difference? Not to think about how to do it, but to generate that reality. Because we are always engaged in generating reality, and you generate it through the heart, as I've said many times. And in 2025, in fact, that same manifestation course literally explained how this process works. All of this happens through yourself, from within. In detail, step by step, we went over all of this. Now, the mind, in this sense, you see, takes what already exists. It juggles all of that in some way and tries to reproduce something from it, to draw some conclusions, but it relies only on the past, while you need to build something new. You want to build something that hasn't existed before. Most of us want to create something new, not just rehash what already was, right? So once again, the idea of generation becomes the main thing here. What do I want to generate? How do you upload new data? This isn't a question about data itself. It's about what we're approaching right now. It's the process itself. And just a second, we have a question. If I see my own beliefs and constructs, and I realize that they don't help me solve my problems, then where do I find the ones that will help me? Where should I look? So look, I'll answer this question now. Where to find them? Where to look? Good morning to everyone who's still awake. Let's move in this direction. Look, now, in order to properly start this process, it's absolutely best if you fully understand the following crucial information. So this is the most basic paradigm from which your mind can move forward, because we're retraining the mind so that it starts interpreting things differently. Let me just say something for a second. Once again, look, we're taking an absolutely physical, understandable approach. The mind interprets things in the old ways. With old understandings, we tell it, look, let me show you how to interpret things differently. For this process to work, it has to say, yes, okay, I understand, I will do it differently. Now, at this boundary, we have the following. Every second, not every second. With every unit of Planck time, we actually shift into a new universe, which is usually completely incomprehensible to the human mind. But for now, let's just take this as information. This number represents how many times per second you change universes. This means that at this frequency, the shift occurs, switches, so to speak, between neural connections in the brain. In other words, it flows, let's put it that way. And new reality is activated. The mind cannot process each new reality. You see, it simply can't handle that volume. It can't create anything at that speed. So all that's left for the mind is to interpret. Now, we come to the very idea of integration, which is where everything starts to put things in their proper places. The first process. We are moving toward realizing that the infinity of all scenarios comes from this point, and then to choose to focus on the desired scenario. What I've talked about many times before, I want to say it once again now. Right now, absolutely all scenarios of everything are available to you. That is, through this number of long sequences, at any moment you can enter any universe, absolutely any, with absolutely any inputs. The only thing holding you back is the belief system that tells you it's not allowed to go there. First, as I said, it's collective. In other words, you won't suddenly fly to the moon out of nowhere. This is a powerful block. And it's not as powerful as the one that... Because when we shift into a new universe, we change to a new collective belief system. If we've shifted in the previous one, it was forbidden, but in this one, it's already allowed. Always little by little. This is the micro shift that creates the effect of continuity. Why is it always so smooth, so gradual? All realities are absolutely available in and of themselves. Anything can happen to you. There is no physical logic that you have to study somewhere, go somewhere. Think of it like this. You got a call and everything changed instantly. You want something, yes, or someone came to you, aliens arrived, or a wizard walked through the wall. Everything. It can change instantly like that, not because of something from the outside, but because you have shifted your belief system. And now, that is, we establish the following. The first thing the mind must realize is that all realities are possible. That is, look, you realize I have a belief system because there is something I don't like. Okay, so if I can... The second point, I realize that all realities are possible, and then the only question I have is which one will I choose? The realization that all realities are possible is the key moment when you start to give yourself permission. Because if you say, I can't, then that's it. There is no permission anymore. In other words, the previous restrictions or limitations that once existed are no longer present. To move in this direction, we must allow ourselves to take the necessary steps forward and give ourselves the chance to embrace new opportunities. This is where it's very good. Fantasy helps when you at least allow yourself to imagine something, to fantasize, to engage in creativity. That is a mode of mind in which you think non-linearly. It's a mode of mind. To consider things that are not part of the standard routine, once again, it can be just a game of something, because a game, you think non-linearly about your life. It is illogical in relation to life, any game. Soccer is illogical. It doesn't develop your professional skills outside of soccer in any way. You draw, you let the energy flow, and so the mind relaxes. The neural network itself ceases to be active. When this happens, you begin to slowly and gradually admit, perhaps for the very first time, that something is indeed possible, something that has not been observed or experienced before in your life. That is to say, you start to fantasize, you allow yourself to play, you give yourself permission to imagine something new. And with that, you are in this unique state of mind. You accept it, you embrace it, and you let it become a part of your reality. For integration to happen, we now need to truly elevate ourselves above the belief system. That is, the frequency at which the negative system operates is, well, let's say, if you look at this thermometer, it's conventionally minus 50. When you go up in frequency, again, we've discussed this a lot in webinars. Everyone, I think, understands this topic of grounding, what importance it has. Again, yes, in courses and webinars all year. In recent years, we've been looking at this all the time. Grounding relationships with nature, with trees. All of this allows us to raise the frequency. Why? When you raise the frequency, you observe the activation in the literal physical brain, the restructuring of neural connections, in which you see that all possibilities are possible. That is, at this frequency, at a higher one, you are kind of observing from above, so to speak, all the grids of possibilities. I just said that, right? When we play, when we do things out of some kind of order, when we engage in creativity, we activate the brain through non-standard pathways, rising in frequency, interacting with nature, and so on. We now look from above, and we begin to show and tell the mind, it looks at it, yes, all realities are possible. That is, I don't know now, for example, how I will choose, but I must now at least see that all this is possible. The first course I did was called Everything is Possible. And when you look from above, you become whole. Again, the last course, sorry. Look at yourself holistically, at your whole self. You realize you are whole. From this wholeness, from this awareness, you say, aha, now I will build a new route. And this choice is made at a high frequency. If we go down in frequency, then what you chose 15 minutes ago will seem to you like, oh, I was just fantasizing. It's so difficult. It's so hard. I have problems there. Why did you start thinking that? Because you dropped in frequency. And it seems to you that it's impossible. And here's the point I want to additionally show. To highlight that we need to truly and fully comprehend from the position of the higher self, when we are at the top, what is the deeper meaning of this belief? Or how does it serve me? This is where most people tend to have a constant and ongoing misunderstanding, because they are considering what the true meaning or significance of this particular belief is, and they do so from the position of the ego itself, from the perspective of the mind that is actively interpreting and analyzing. If you look, I've gathered here for a moment what we are actually considering when there is a feeling. I'm enduring something, I don't like something, I'm in pain, it's unpleasant, and so on feelings. Once again, this is a signal that we are now dealing with a negative belief. This is not reality, it is the result of a negative belief at work. That is, the mind must always understand this, no matter what happens to you next. At the same time, the mind says, it says so because it is trained on negative systems. It says, there is no way out. It has always been this way. Everyone says this is right. This is how the world works. I have proof that the world works this way. Everyone tells me so, or there are no options to get out of here at all. I have ironclad logic. I have a history that has shown and repeated this. I've tried many times and it doesn't work. I have a precise diagnosis confirmed by 16 doctors, 40 PhDs, and so on. That is to say, all of this, your mind, now in a completely new and different state, in which you have truly risen to a much greater height than before, sees with a fresh and expanded perspective how belief systems actually work and operate in the world around you. I emphasize all of this. And accordingly, when you are in this situation and you generate thoughts, you can recognize that you need to think it over again. The search for solutions, or you need to agree to the familiar. I won't do it because it's a familiar pain. In the 4K Club, there was a question from Yulia. Hello, Yulia from America. that voiced something along these lines from a different perspective, namely that I'm afraid to do this because I'm afraid to step out. Yes, so once again, yes, it's the topic of being afraid of the new, of the comfort zone, that the new is supposedly uncomfortable. And to the mind, it seems, look, this is a very important point. It seems that if I do this, I'll step out of my comfort zone. And it's scary out there. I'll be attacked. Something will happen to me. And here, in fact, this line shows that you are now thinking directly from your belief system. These are unreal thoughts. It's not real. That is, you are now busy thinking about unreal thoughts. You are simply interpreting the old paradigm. But what can you do about it? And here we say, look, I am generating from here, and thought is engaged in interpretation. Therefore, I don't need to use thoughts to get out. Because the mind will always prefer to stay in a familiar pain that I've been in for many years, and I'm not happy with it. For example, there's not enough money, something hurts, something with relationships, but it's all familiar. By the way, it's a very common theme in the question. I've been married for many years. My husband is a jerk, a scoundrel. I don't know what he's up to. But I can't leave the marriage because out there is the unknown. Oh, I beg you. Someone who got out saw what kind of unknown was there. Ho 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 ho. Why was I even sitting in that situation? And this seemingly comfortable, familiar pain is a complete lie of the mind. It's a pure lie, absolutely. And when you want that ho 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 and you get it, then of course you have an epiphany. So this exit to the ho ho, to another level, it happens inside. Here's what you need to understand. You must first generate it and then receive it in the external world. But the mind is afraid and starts to generate. Look, the question is not what to do. The question is how to generate. Feel the difference. The question is not what to do. The question is how to generate. Because what to do is a question from the mind based on the old system. But how to generate is a question of how to use frequency to generate a reaction, a new reality. These are two different approaches. If you are now already in a state of entering multidimensionality or have started thinking in a multidimensional way, it's already clear to you that as soon as you switch to I don't think, I generate, everything happens quickly, easily, without pain, joyfully, ecstatically, and enjoy. And you don't have time to, so to speak, get scared. There's no time. We'll now look at this from a different point of view. Well, not different, but simplified. But here's the thing. Again, there are two positions of perception. There is the real you, the true essence of your being, who creates worlds in order to know yourself within the vastness of infinity. It is the real you that generates and shapes reality. And there is you as an ego personality who perceives and experiences life through the unique prism of your beliefs. These are two different systems for generating reality. So the one who perceives through the prism of beliefs has at their core, I am not worthy, I am not valuable, I am separate, I am abandoned, I am powerless, I don't know, I am insignificant, I am helpless, I am this, I am that, and so on, I am in fear. All of this is perception through a prism. And when taking a step back, when we consider the situation of how does this belief system serve me? That is, you've elevated yourself, you're observing. That is, you have raised your frequency to this level, which is called real. And this real you, it is the one that must answer the question, how does this belief system serve me? Once you are the real you, because you created it, the negative belief system, you are responsible for it. As soon as you've acknowledged it, discovered what purpose it serves, it has built the trajectory of your entire life. You understood that you created this life yourself, you took full responsibility for yourself. That's one. And you are grateful to the belief system, meaning you've started to be above it, you've started to manage it, you've bypassed it in terms of frequency, and from above, once you've bypassed it in frequency, from that position, you can already tell your mind, look, now you will interpret the negative belief system as false, as absurd, as unnecessary. And then, when the mind goes through this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, It sees that this is a false belief system. In the very act of interpretation, it perceives it as a lie. It doesn't accept it as a basis. It disappears and nothing moves along this channel anymore. Neurons, the neural connections, no longer move along this channel. It no longer works through the negative system because the mind has already recognized it as unserving, as useless. But the first step is that you must raise your frequency to the level of your true reality, take responsibility, and look from there in order to send a new command down to the mind from above, a new understanding of where you are. In most cases, people remain within a system of beliefs. I am not worthy, I am separate, and so on. From within it, they try to understand what purpose an illness serves me, what purpose bad relationships serve me, what purpose poverty serves me. No matter where you look, I am separate from it. What for? For nothing, and it's the wrong person looking. You see, it's impossible. That is, you are on a trajectory, and from it you are trying to get on the trajectory. You're going down this road, say, from Paris to Beijing, and you're trying to see where on this trajectory is, I don't know, what's there. I picked a far-off example. Let's try this. What's near Paris? Paris-Lyon, that's inside France, right? Where on this trajectory can I find, let's say, Berlin? Well, it's not on this trajectory. You need to get on the trajectory of the whole planet, and there you'll find all the routes. And so if that's clear, I hope this specific point is very clear. And so next, let's move on. We'll see if there are any questions that came up along the way. Well, this is related to the previous point that it's better to act from inspiration, not from fear. And we are now just synchronistically approaching this very topic about acting from inspiration. Okay, actually, pain is a danger signal. Maybe it's a heart attack. Actually, pain is a signal that you have blocked something in your body. A danger signal, look, I've talked about this many times, but it's actually very, very simple. You have a car and an indicator light. The light is on, something is wrong. You can call that a danger signal. Okay, so what is your action? To sit and cry or to fix the cause? Well, let's say Abraham had a signal that the gas is running out. Well, fill up, drive on, that's it. That is, it's not a danger like something is about to happen and so on. It's a danger that inside you, and the way you are acting now, the way you are thinking now, the system you are using generates something that will lead you to something negative. Therefore, the very first reaction is, what am I doing? It's, I am generating this very pain. Change yourself to change, to stop doing what you were doing. Then your belief system might lead you to a doctor and so on. That's your business. Those with a more developed sense of self and understanding of their body quickly and easily understand how this is connected to perception. After all, again, you don't have to look far. There's hypnosis, which you can go to. In France, by the way, yes, hypnosis is a direct medical practice. In many countries, they are considered charlatans. Well, there are many of them, where at the level of the mind-body connection, you can see these things, that the mind always influences all these things. Okay, in the state of presence, it's as if desire disappears. We are now talking, look, in the state of presence, we are not trying to say that you are solving desires. In the state of presence, we re-examine ourselves as a system. What is happening to me, we re-examine our system. We are not trying to, let's say, generate a new reality in 5 minutes. We are re-examining the belief system. Here is presence. Re-examine and give answers to the mind about what is inside you. You have the opportunity to look at everything from above. But people often try to do things like, I need to quickly generate a high state of mind or energy right now, immediately, and then run to invest it in making money or something else. Or something else, yes, some kind of energy. I don't quite understand what worlds I am creating and tuning into a reality that has already been created by someone else. No, look, technically everything already exists. The logic here lies in the position. For those who attend the webinars and are constantly present in the live streams, I think this is already automatic. Everything is easily perceived. I've described it in many different books. It's a very, very simple logic. When you see that everything is here and now, this is a completely physical understanding that nothing exists outside of one time, one place. And so within a single time, all are created. I mean, how are they created? They exist, let's put it that way, all possibilities. This is what is called to be. That is, everything exists at once, but it exists. Right now, for example, there are jungles in Africa where a monkey is sitting on a tree. And you, for example, are not in Africa, but somewhere at home, and you don't have that Africa. But you know that it exists somewhere. So you need to get there. Now, it's the same that all variants of all connections exist, but they are not physical. And as soon as you correspond to these connections in frequency, you immediately ignite it in the form of the real world. That is, it was potential until you got there. You arrived, it became real. It is you personally who turn potential into reality. Where you are not, nothing exists from the perspective of the real. What exists there is potential. Every point where you are present becomes real for you. That is, you can ignite any potential and make it real. That's how it works, because it's a thoroughly and completely physical understanding of how the world can exist. Now, so what else can we add here to make it even better? Maybe I missed it. There's a gap. We retrain the mind to new neural connections. How is this related to generating and improving life? Well, this is exactly how it's connected. Well, as soon as you understand that potentials exist, once your mind is retrained to see other potentials than the ones you used to choose, you simply ignite it and you just don't activate the old potential. A frequency is activated to which you, so to speak, move, and for you, an event that was impossible an hour ago becomes real. That is, an hour ago you were saying, this can't be, this has never happened before. I've tried 100 times and it didn't work. You switched and it became absolutely real because you began to match the frequency of other potentials. That's how it happens. Now the mind follows these frequencies where it exists. Now one more time. What important purpose or function can a belief serve? I'm really stuck on this. The belief I am separate. The belief I am separate. Yes, I understand this is a public stream. I talked about it more in the webinars. This is a central theme in general because unity at the point of here and now is always one thing in order to create worlds at all. And you need to create the illusion of separateness that from one came many. You see, for you to believe that there is a multitude of things while you are one and you are everything, you need to somehow separate yourself. To create, this is the theme of wholeness. You are whole initially. And how can you see that you are something other than you? What this is wholeness. You initially need the idea that I will imagine that I have a reflection that lives outside of me, independently of me. I will imagine this. You imagine this, and then what happens to us? We believed in it, and we started to live by it. That's what separation is for. It serves for us to create the physical world. If right now you perceive with 100% certainty that you are one, your entire physical life could collapse. Because you will explode in the form of love for everything. You realize everything, you understand everything, all the connections, all the lives, strengths, incarnations, all the tasks. That is, you can't handle it, your physical body won't take it. Therefore, separation always builds boundaries, and we gradually overcome them. As much as the mind is ready for the realization of unity, that is, to return to the basic things. Okay, what purpose can the belief I am unworthy serve? Again, yes, I won't list everything now, but let's take an example. When you are at the level of your higher self, you look at the situation, why did you create this life? And you look from the level of your higher self and see that you wouldn't be able to live like this. You wouldn't be able to choose I don't know, friends. You wouldn't be able to look at your parents with these eyes. You wouldn't have chosen your career. You wouldn't have chosen in the way you did the, I don't know, society around you if you didn't have the idea that you are unworthy. It was the idea that you have to earn it, to become worthy, to buy something, to show something that pushed you and pushed you and pushed you. You have now come here, I mean, to this point in your life, and you are now ready to transcend this system. If you can see the entire trajectory of your life from above, you transcend it and say, that's it, I don't want to use it anymore. This trajectory has served its purpose in making me who I am, so that I can now enter a new phase. That is, now I'm able to use all of this knowledge and understanding to better comprehend other people and to be broader, more expansive, bigger, and to create and shape life on a much grander, more impressive scale. Do you understand what I mean? That is, if you haven't walked this path and you are immediately worthy and so on, you look at a person who feels unworthy and you don't even understand why that fool thinks that way. How can you possibly think you're unworthy? I just don't get it. Having gone through it, you understand, aha, he feels this, he sees it through these eyes, and you understand other people, you understand the system. And accordingly, if you have gone through it all yourself, you can lead others through it too. So this applies to many things. Now, let's get back to it. I hope I've answered the main questions, and now this is what I was talking about. Look, when you come to the point where you perceive yourself from the perspective that you are real and not using the prism of beliefs, and in order to perceive yourself as real, once again, we raise the frequency using all the methods we've discussed. And we understand on a deeper level that the real you can then directly generate reality itself. And now, generating reality directly means that you are truly in the flow, fully present. And the flow is a very interesting, paradoxical state. You don't have to do anything from this state. See, you remain static in your inspiration. So the work is to be inspired. That is, when I am in the flow, it means I am statically inspired. But at the same time, in inspiration, you rush through events, making a new decision every second out of inspiration. That is not doing anything, outside of inspiration. It looks like this. You are in the flow. You are at the level of your higher self in a state of inspiration. You realize that you have a belief system around you. They exist, but you don't choose them. You are in the flow. That's the thing, right? How do I get through, enter the new, the unknown? Don't leave the flow. Don't be afraid. Stay in the flow. That is, there are not even moments of fear here. Right now, you are in the flow, and you don't need to do anything outside of the flow. Right now, in the flow, that's it. Nothing at all poses any danger to you because you are the one generating. You are generating the highest state and reality right now. It shows clearly. And what does the mind say at this time? The mind says, uh, through a negative belief, it actually disagrees with the flow. It says, I insist that I need to be in a negative state. I don't consider myself the creator of my reality. There are external threats. There is an external world. I need to urgently take some action. I need to leave the flow. I need to jump out of inspiration. I need to leave inspiration behind. I disagree. I need to think negative thoughts. I need to worry about, that is, to feel bad. I must leave the flow because the negative belief system is calling me, and supposedly I will fix something. And a very curious, constant thing happens. Okay, I'll go fix it. Good job. And this happens constantly, left and right. Left and right, I'm discussing one topic with a person. To be in the flow, to generate from the heart, right at this point. And boom, he immediately starts discussing how to be negative. But what if this or that happens to me? Why are you talking about it now? Why are you going through all these options? Look at what makes you think that at all. This is not a position for solving problems. Now look, I want to show you a very simple point. an algorithm for any situation to be in the flow. You need to solve any problem. Okay, we break it down into 10 steps. And you do it in such a way that you start doing the first step this very second, right this very second. That is, it's not about sitting and staring at the ceiling. It's not about hiding. It's about doing something right now. But the condition is this very second you start with inspiration. That is, with joy, you must absolutely go through the first stage with inspiration. First, second, third. And then, when you start doing something that very second to solve your problem, but from a place of inspiration, you start each next stage by also checking in with inspiration. And you must be ready for something to change after the second, third, fifth, or seventh step. And it will change so much that you'll have to change the plan. If you honestly take the first, second, and third steps and you keep going, you will be solving your task. Clearly focus on the solution, but from a place of inspiration, not letting yourself let your mind get lost in negative interpretations, but instead you are constantly generating. And in this state of generation, when you are coming from the heart, you are in this state of generation and you don't let yourself leave it by acting right now. You begin that very unknown, that impossible. But the first step, look, what is the first step? It can be very simple. I need to take the first step, make a call, pick up the phone, call and say, hello, can I ask you the following? Or nowadays, yes, you can take something like ChatGPT and write, how is this problem solved? Right now, but from a place of inspiration. Now, not tomorrow, now. How is this problem solved? Tell me, please, how can I ask? This moment for the mind is just, how can I just pick up the phone and call? Oh, that's terrifying. Everything will just collapse on me. I recently had a conversation with someone. I say, call and ask, and they tell me, are you kidding? They're going to monitor me after the call. Who are you to them? Who needs you? You call and ask how it works at all. Legal, illegal, just ask. You see? Call from another number. Right. When you ask, that is, it's not like that. When you do it now from inspiration, not through pain, not out of fear. Oh, I'm afraid I won't do it. No, first inspiration, the first step, and now I'll call, I'll ask, I'll find out, I'll clarify, I'll do whatever, right? Or I'll go outside the apartment, right? Open the door, walk out the door. That is, the first step is to go out. That is, for you, in solving your problem of how to earn 1 billion, the first step is to leave the apartment. Okay? Or the first step is to get dressed. Get dressed. Or the first step is to wipe the dust off the windowsill. Wipe the dust off the windowsill. Start with any action, but it has to be a wow. You take the first step, then the second, and you have, say, 10 steps to, I don't know, to happiness. But we don't fall out of it. And at the fifth step, you tell yourself, okay, wait, I've already gone through 5 points. I can, so to speak, sit down, rewrite the plan, and take a look. Or in half of the cases, somewhere around the fifth point, you get some information. That is, you made a call or went somewhere, you left your apartment, went out for a walk, and someone comes up to you and says, listen, didn't you know? Over there, they're giving away billions all around, and you're the only one not taking any. You say, no way, really? And you're like, holy crap. If you hadn't gone out, you would never have known. If you hadn't called, you wouldn't have known. If you hadn't asked, you wouldn't have known. You didn't take the first step. You were stuck in a belief system that said you can't. You can't take the first step. You can't. Do you see? You take the first step, you learn something you didn't know, you meet someone you wouldn't have met, and something opens up to you that wasn't open before. Somewhere around, I don't know, the third, maybe fifth or sixth step. The whole system changes. You realize you didn't draw it right, but you need to redraw it without leaving the flow. You continuously implement, you do your thing, but you don't have a moment of fear, no moment of resistance, no difficulties at all, zero. Keep in mind, everything in the flow is always created just like this. A sign that you had to strain yourself somewhere is either that you've run up against a belief system somewhere and are bending, or you're now approaching a very new, strong, let's call it ecstasy. Yes, something you didn't let yourself get close to before, and now it's about to happen. That is, the frequencies are starting to close, to connect. So you arrive, if you'll allow me, yes. Yesterday I wanted to buy some cottage cheese. I get to the store and there's no cottage cheese. For some cheese pancakes. Okay, so by the logic of the mind, well, it's like there's no cottage cheese in the store and you want cheese pancakes in the morning. What? I get out of the car or out of the store. What should I do? Of course, I should sit down on the asphalt and cry because it's a tragedy. My plans are ruined. It didn't work out. That's it. The universe has betrayed me, and so on. Or I understand that if I ended up in this place where that solution wasn't available, it means there's something in another place where I need to arrive, which will give me something I wouldn't have gotten here. That is, the flow is calling me somewhere. And with interest, with enthusiasm, I continue on to this new place in order to get something of my own. I don't know. I went for one thing and got another. You see, the logic is that you can plan it one way, but it turns out another way. And when you say, well, I'm generating it, I have the inspiration, it means it's the mind that interprets what was supposed to happen. But this is all different. I've told you that the mind cannot create anything. The mind came, and now when you have a negative system, you don't allow it, and you arrive, and you're like, aha, wow. So something new has been activated, and you're like, something new. Wow, what does this mean? It's some new ecstasy, a new reception, something new. It's a new universe. That is, when you don't get something exactly as planned in this system, so that you don't leave the flow, you know for sure that a tasty treat is being delivered. Some new delicacy that has never existed before, and you are in anticipation of receiving something special. It always works this way. And then step by step, you restructure, you reconsider, and you always get the answer you need for yourself in any situation. Once again, the mind is an instrument of interpretation. The mind creates nothing. The heart generates reality. And so the final part is as follows. When you have shown the mind what a negative belief system looks like, what is at its core, how it is false, the mind has stopped taking it into interpretation and has stopped including it in its equation. And this belief system has ceased to be present in your conclusions. This is what the cycle looks like. Again, we've been discussing the belief system for 2 years, right? I explained from all angles how it's structured, how to go through it, how to raise frequencies, how to do this and that, all these nuances. Today, we are wrapping this up with the fact that I will no longer, probably, yes, discuss this topic because I believe we have covered it completely. And now we have more interest. Well, not more, but the next evolutionary steps. Here at the end, I want to say the following. If we don't use this system of integrating negative beliefs, I was asked why not disidentification with the negative system, but because it's a part of it. When you became your higher self, you stopped identifying with it. That is, it's a part of integration, an internal component. So you stopped identifying with it because you went through integration. So you go through all this, either as I've just described, consciously raising frequencies, understanding the whole process, and repeating, falling, rising. That is, repeating, falling, rising, each time stumbling upon a new belief system, a new one, a new one, a new one. You start to always see it as a process. All of this becomes very recognizable. And as we discussed earlier, yes, they are connected to cyclicality. The cyclical repetition of events always shows that a strong belief system is at work. That is, when something in life repeats itself, it's a direct indication of a belief system. It's very blatant. So when you already realize all of this, you repeat it, you go through it with a new perception, you raised the frequency, looked at why I created this, raised it again, and looked, you know that you will fall, you will not feel good. I mean, the frequency will drop when you don't feel good. You will understand that you have immersed yourself in a negative belief system. And even now, I don't understand a damn thing. I don't like it now. I'm not happy with it. Everyone's an idiot. Everyone's a jerk. But at the same time, I understand, the mind understands that this is a negative belief system inside. And the mind doesn't want to stay there for long. It starts to pull itself upwards. And so if you choose to go through integration consciously, you do it step by step, like a ladder. And there, let's say, relatively speaking, you solve all the issues in a year. all the issues in your life in general that were worrying you. And in a year, you are solving completely different issues, which that person couldn't even dream of. And this one is already solving completely different issues. Or you can learn the hard way through evolution and just calmly go through all of this in 10 to 15 years and then just figure out that this is what was being talked about right now. One way or another, the paths of integration are the same. They can just be taken consciously or evolutionarily. Well, again, yes, you take a piece from here, a piece from there. It gets glued together somewhere. Well, it's a matter of personal choice. I can't insist that someone should have a better or faster path. Now, what do we have? We've talked about beliefs, what it can be. If old themes are physically present, there are actions that regularly need to be done in this situation. How to train your ability to focus your attention regardless of the facts. Look, yes, actually already talked about those old themes being physically present. Nothing that you've just asked, how should I put it, contradicts what I've just said. To be more precise, what I said about acting from inspiration right now in all the old systems, you can absolutely launch all of this from any position whatsoever. Everything external that was old will fall apart on its own. You don't need to mentally plan how to break it down. It will fall apart on its own. You generate what you desire to create from inspiration. Everything else, like an eggshell from a chick, will just fall away on its own. Can all negative beliefs be integrated at once, or only in groups? You don't consider all of them, or 2, or 15. Your inspiration is guiding you right now. So, as soon as you don't like something, you know that something is active that you need to address right at this moment. That's it. And at that moment, you will resolve exactly that. The fact is, an important point we discussed earlier is that when going through a negative belief system, a person always activates accompanying events, which we called shadow slippers, right? Which arrive as feedback. So I raised my frequency, and immediately everything that corresponded to that negative system came at me. Yes, because of the process, I shone a light on it, saw dirt everywhere, it all came up, or the murkiness rose, right? And it needs to be cleansed, well, to be purified, to stop being active. So consequently, if you bring up all the negative systems at once, you'll have such an active life, meaning all the existing negativity will crash down on you and you just won't be able to handle it. That's why your higher self, through inspiration, always allows exactly the volume that you can, at this moment, pro-integrate. Nothing superfluous, no harsh blows. Meaning, if you act from the heart through inspiration, all the negative information that comes to you as a fact, 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 fact. So factual information arrives. Yes. You stay in a state of inspiration and poof, it's gone. And that is always fantastic, really. Just a moment ago, everyone was threatening you, everything was over, nothing was possible, all paths were closed. You stay in that state, and the next day it disappears. It's absolutely mind blowing. It always happens 100% of the time. By staying here, as soon as you say, if you'll allow me, I'll now go back a couple of slides. The moment you say that you have chosen your heart and you have truly chosen the belief system to stay on top of things in your life, you are making a conscious decision. The moment you say, well, I have this information that I need to somehow deal with the negativity, therefore I need to think a little about ways to solve the negativity, and you immediately jump into that situation. The algorithm again. We break the task into 10 steps so that you can start acting on the first one right now, this very second. You don't need to think about anything. Well, I mean, you do need to think. Of course, you need to think. Right at that moment, choose the first step that would be an inspiration. At this very second, then it's logical. When you are inspired, then it's logical for you to think. That's what I wanted to say. Not that you shouldn't think. When you are inspired, Your thoughts about this situation arise on their own, or the events themselves arise. But if you're in a negative state, you can't think about a negative situation from a place of negativity. You are simply guaranteed to be swimming with sharks. You can't think from a place of negativity in a negative situation. You can't, or you can do it, but then you are agreeing to the fact that you are literally generating a hard-hitting negative situation in your life. And do you really need that? Do you understand? Uh, okay. Here's another one. Yes, I confirm. I have personally experienced such incredible resolutions many times. All right, guys. I hope I was helpful to you. I hope I was clear. I hope this is all very simple and easy. And once again, yes, Happy New Year to those who have just joined. We are doing interesting, happy things. It was great to see you. See you soon. Bye, everyone. Ciao.